Tim Hamilton is here.
Noah Demarest is here.
Peter Masco here.
Okay, everyone's present. We're here to consider the variance application for East Seneca Road for Richard and Susan Robertson, who want to build a house in an area that has a wetland. Who'd like to speak on behalf of the Robertsons?
Our son that was.
All right, but maybe it was the architect and the lawyer and the businessman. Tell us what you want to do, and that way bring everybody up to speed if you guys haven't reviewed the documents that were sent to you. Go ahead.
Sure, so I assume I see you doing that. So I'll assume there's some understanding, but generally, this property is located in the wetland overlay district, which requires a 100 or 100-foot buffer from the boundary of the wetland. And so the only, we'll say, wetland that's been delineated prior to what Dickens have done is the federal wetland, which is done for basically 58,000 feet. It's aerial infrared images, just kind of drops an outline of what they anticipate the wetland area is. So this was done, I believe, in 2012. And there was a lot of development already done previously. I don't know if you've seen this.
Yeah, I've seen. Is that the photo you sent? Oh, this is the wetland delineation.
So this is an image that shows what the federal registry basically designated as a wetland.
Now, is this map here? Is it that little corner that is the wetland
So
on your plot?
that wetland that I just handed you is not on this map. So what we ended up doing is they hired Delta engineers to actually delineate the wetland versus relying on, what's kind of a broad brush approach to generating the wetland data. But I thought one of the things that was kind of important about that image is, if you see what I bubbled, is the amount of development that actually exists in the core of the wetland. And so what we've done here is, if you go back to this survey map, you'll see I've shaded this yellow area, which is essentially based on the delineated, the actual wetland boundary, what the buffer zone would be as written by zoning. And then I put that red triangle there. That's the only portion of, we'll say, that property where there is wetland. And we're basically asking for a variance to put the house, the corner of the house will be about 55 feet from the wetland. So we're not asking for approval to put the house in the wetland. We're just asking for a variance to reduce the buffer required. I think the application asks for 240 feet.
If folks haven't figured it out, the turnaround for Sunrise Terrace is a good point of orientation.
Right.
The two maps here are a little different than what they show, but that helps.
And the other thing to take note on that I think is particularly important as we talk about any sort of negative impacts of this, if you look at the contours shown on the survey map, one of the things that we looked at is, where's the driveway going to be, the garage that's existing, future garage, front entry sidewalks. Those items are going to fall outside of the 100-foot buffer zone, and the contours all fall away. So they slope away from the wetland, which I think is relevant to this conversation if we consider any sort of detrimental impact associated with.
You're seeing the driveway coming in from Seneca Road? Yes. Not coming off of Sunrise Terrace?
There's a strip of land that's owned by a different entity.
You can see the margin right there.
Right, from Sunrise. So I didn't know you could get a right of
Yeah, they
usage
can
to come in,
or
an easement.
something, but
Okay, but the plan is to come in off of Seneca.
Is it east or west of the proposed house? Off Seneca.
What, the driveway?
Yeah.
So the driveway will come from the north. So where you see Seneca Road at the top of the survey will come in. We haven't plotted the exact location, but likely half in front of the barn. noted there. And then
Right.
if you look at the box for proposed house, the front left corner is the actual garage entrance.
And so what's the reason for needing to put the house into this buffer area in the first place?
So one of the things, if you're familiar with the area, is there is a long-standing apple orchard. I think there's 60 trees roughly 60 apple trees. Yeah, the property's been in the family. Longer than I've been alive. But you know, that apple orchard is kind of a staple of the community. There's always an apple stand out. You know, people can come buy fresh apples from the stand, and trying to find a location here to build that is not going to detract from the community aesthetic, and also trying to preserve as many of the apple trees as possible. That back corner where you see the house located, there's a kind of an L-shaped carve out where there aren't trees. And so this kind of solves a couple of design objectives that we.
It's not clear to me how close the proposed house is to the current orchard, like where does the orchard line fall in this map with the yellow, red? Yeah, I'm sort of having trouble understanding.
Have you seen this photo that Tom sent out?
No,
Sent it, I printed it in, like, those are all the trees. These are all the apple trees. There's the barn.
but is the house?
I walked the property
Street in
today,
front of
and
it.
the back area is the only area that's clear of trees and stuff. It's like a big lawn area that seemed really ideal to go around.
The trees are basically across from the barn. And they,
Yeah.
the trees are essentially across from the barn and come back towards the proposed house location. There may be a row or two of them in front of the barn. But that's it. I mean, I have 30-some years.
Yes. So you already drive past the barn and around the trees. I'm looking at the aerial, and it looks like there's already
Yeah, you can see a
sort of
worn,
drive in that pathway there.
yeah, you can see there's a worn path from where vehicles come off of Seneca and drive back in front of the barn.
So these are three parcels, the two on Seneca Road and the one that wraps behind. Those are three parcels you've merged.
It's in the process of.
It's in the process, because I saw the materials here that were in here, the tax map revision. Now, who's making that decision to join the process? That,
We are.
no, but I mean, it's, who gives that
County
approval?
assessment.
The county
The
assessment.
county just does that?
Yeah,
Okay,
Yeah, my understanding, you don't need to do much to consolidate.
right.
Subdivide.
If you're subdividing, it has to go. Okay, so so that whole section in the back that really is all in the wetlands is your lot. And is your lot then the one to the right of this, where all the orchards are as well?
That's correct.
But you're keeping that as a separate lot. You're not combining all that together.
Combining all three properties.
Yeah, that's what the document said. They were combining all three properties.
Well, I'm trying to see, so you have a split line down here and a split line there. Are these not, is this all of this? I'm trying to see what is being combined.
All three of
Looking
those.
at three of
But it's gonna make a big L.
It's gonna make a big L. You got 100-foot lot. and then you
Okay,
got
but who has this one?
150 lot.
That was- it's on the-
Last name Cook.
Because isn't that a bunch of the orchards in there?
No.
No.
Oh, the orchard all just fits in this little space.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's Barbara Page's house.
All right. Okay,
It's about 4 acres of land or so.
okay. As far as I understand, because it's a wetland, do we consider this the same as a typical variance in the questions of impact?
well, it's an overlay district, not the wetlands.
So I mean, it's an overlay district, but
Yeah, and that is a village designation, you know, it's not like a DC or a federal
right.
designation for the overlay. So, it's, I think we take into consideration the impact of the structure being here in the buffer district.
Mhm. I assumed it was pretty straightforward that, based on the typical 5 rules of variance, we just walk through those. But without having public comment here, we don't have anything to base on whether we would change our ideas. You see what I'm saying?
No,
Did, I don't think they submitted to you, but there was, one of the adjacent neighbors to the property submitted a letter.
Yeah, I've seen the letter.
Well, no, this other one just came up.
And,
right?
Frislo's.
Frizzle's is a direct neighbor.
And-
I have a copy of that.
Oh, this is David Means, did the handwritten one.
I've only seen one letter.
Can we make sure this is up to the attached?
And Frislo is the adjacent neighbor to the northwest.
Yeah, and that shows it on the big map.
Does the board members have any other questions as far as their reasons why they want to locate there? Do you have other questions about a particular impact you think the house being where it is?
Yeah, it's a bit busy.
I don't have any. I know the area really well. So. Pretty straightforward.
No, I saw it. Okay. Since we don't have public comment, I didn't realize this wasn't a public hearing. I thought we were going to be able to make a decision. Right? It's my fault. I don't necessarily want to walk through the five rules until we're ready to make it as a determination. I feel like we're going to have another meeting because of that. We're going to have a public hearing. I don't know that we're going to have them explain anything more to us unless you have more information you want. I think at that point, we will have a meeting where we'll open it to public comment. And then we'll walk through the 5 delineations of a variance and we'll render a determination. But we can't do that legally today.
This would be
You
a
have to
can.
advertise the hearing ahead of time, correct?
What's that?
You have to advertise the hearing.
Yes, this was advertised as a public meeting.
Yeah, was there a reason why it was done that way?
No, it was a mistake between Jessica and I to do it that way. I just, we were having a lot of conversations of who needed to go first, planning board versus zoning board, and we should just plug ahead with it. That's all.
So we could look at this like a sketch plan review. Look, we have the information here in front of us. We have the applicants in front of us. If there's information that we would care to see before the actual public hearing, this would be the time to.
If there are things you think you would want to set as conditions, let's talk about them now.
Right.
In front of the applicant, like, I think you should move the house 20 feet forward and cut down 3 trees and put it there. If that's what you're thinking. I personally walked the property today and I understand the whole thing of putting it in a buffer zone. I understand why we have 100-foot buffer zones, but I was looking at the lay of the land and the contours and I'm going, I don't see this big issue. One thing I noticed in the remarks I think that you put in, Tom, was what's the difference with it had a basement? You made the comment that could cause a larger issue if they decide to put a house in with a basement as far as.
Probably more for them personally than affecting the site.
Are you concerned about like groundwater? Or what's the concern with the basement?
You just got to pump up your drainage, just like I do.
Yeah.
Floaters come in, and pump out, it's just a construction. issue.
Yeah, you're
Zoning issue.
deeper into the soil that could be saturated. Like I said, it affect the homeowners more than.
I mean,
actually.
It's not
I
gonna
do-
cause a residual effect later.
I do kind of feel like there's a reason to have a buffer there, right? Like, I mean, the buffer's there to have a buffer between development and the wetland,
Correct.
right? So it's like, whether you walked it, I mean, you're not necessarily a drainage expert, right?
Nope.
Who's to say that that buffer isn't going to be very important in 4 months when, it's spring and there's a lot of water.
I guess the concern is
Right.
how much do we believe the house will produce more runoff?
I mean,
And where it's
well, it
located.
absolutely will, right? Because the roof is there and it can't run, like. I mean, whether or not that's significant, but I'm just saying like the buffer is there for a reason. And
Would it make a difference in how they
I mean,
would?
I guess I just don't know if my feeling of like, is it worth like leaving that buffer so that they can save some of their apple trees? Like, I definitely like the orchard is beautiful, absolutely, but like, I don't know how many trees it's gonna lose, or like, I mean, but also there's trees in there that are important to, the maintaining ground structure, et cetera, that are gonna go away from that buffer area that are no longer gonna be there. So, I mean, I guess I don't necessarily think it's just a trivial like home run.
Can I ask a question from a standpoint? This has to get a planning board review, correct?
The site plan. review.
Site plan review.
From the planning board?
Correct.
Yeah.
And they have the ability, isn't that exactly what you do in a site plan, is figure out all those issues and go over those things? That's what I thought.
Well, in making that comment and connecting it to yours, would site plan review have the ability to say, regardless of the variance zoning gave, we still want the house to be in a different location because of, we've looked at all the details.
Yeah, again, I don't know like how rigorous that site plan review is, but I mean, if we're making a judgment, I mean, I guess is our judgment on like, do we think that this encroachment on the buffer is significant? I mean, it's more than double the buffer distance, right?
Well, the issue becomes if you looked at the materials related to the, where did I put it?
Yeah.
The short
mean-
form, environmental impact. Did you look at the environmental impact
Yeah.
materials?
Yeah.
The short form that was sent. That addresses, that's just the homeowner doing the environmental, it's not a third party doing it. It addresses what are the things that are susceptible to damage and problems. I think that's when you look at the rules of variance and we're talking about a buffer zone, we're only really focusing on the environmental impact, if I understand correctly. We're less concerned about those other rules that says, is it going to change the character of the neighborhood and things like that? I mean, it's the environmental issue that is the issue. It's not, we're putting it close to our neighbor's property and their house. We're changing the setbacks and what the street looks like, which is what the other rules all deal with. There's the one rule that says, is it going to impact negatively the environment? And I mean, we can look at the environmental impact statement. We can look at, and it was one of the attachments, short environmental assessment form.
I can give you a copy if you like.
Yeah.
Hard copy.
It's
Yeah, okay.
what we can only look at is contour of the land. And how is contour of the land affected by the delineation of a buffer zone? Does that make an impact? They give us the freedom to do a variance within a buffer zone, which says we should be able to look at enough information to make a intelligent decision. I agree with you, not a, well, it's fine. I can't look at a contour map and tell you what it means. That doesn't mean, that's why I walked out there to see how much slope there was, just because I can't tell you what that necessarily means.
Yeah, I mean, I went to the end of Sunrise Terrace and looked, and I didn't go off into the woods.
If you come in from the other way, the big property that's 4.5 acres, the Barbara Page property. As the maps show, it has a gradual fall to that property, and she's got a nice big pond right there. In fact, she just had her pond cleaned out a year or two ago. I mean, it's the perfect catch basin for that entire area, if you look at it. And
So
if you look at
it's-
these lines, it clearly tells, you,
Unlike other parts of the village.
unlike other parts.
So it seems like that wetland's pretty important then, is what you're saying. Everything's
No,
sort of falling.
I'm saying
into
just
that
the
spot.
opposite.
He's saying all the water from
I'm
the
saying-
wetland goes
I'm
to
saying
that
the water
pond.
flows slowly downhill to that pond. There are lines of water that go to that pond, and then it rolls out and down through the drain ditches into Seneca County.
Mhm.
It goes through and across the street, down along Robertson's property on the other side of the road.
Can I make a point?
Sure.
Yeah,
I think it's important to note that, again, this wetland, quote unquote wetland. I mean, it was generated from aerial images from 58,000 feet in the air. And just like what we delineated, we demonstrated the boundary outline of the federal, registry is not exactly what the wetland is. I think that
but didn't your report establish where that wetland? is? I mean,
Right,
that-
your
that's
report
what-
established this
that's
line
what this
that
picture
then
is,
puts the
right?
house
Your
within 55
modern
feet.
report.
my point being, if you look at this map that shows, 10 acres of wetland.
Right.
It's very unlikely, I'd be willing to say 99.9%, that it is not that significant of a wetland. If you walk through those woods, you would get a sense of the contours and what's wet and what's not. Now, they don't go to that level of diligence to document this because they don't have the resources to do so. But we only delineate our property, right? So we don't go through and say, we can delineate your property, your property, and your property to prove that this isn't, the wetland that it is. I mean, clearly, people have successfully built in the more, we'll say, significant portion of the wetland that's indicated by the federal map.
I think if we were gonna look at a reasonable approach to how much additional water would this structure create and where will it send it, then those are things that we should consider. And if we're fearful the planning board won't, then we need to do that homework. Meaning, if the house is gonna be elevated and create even more slope that way, water shedding, if the roof is oriented that half of the water of the roof is gonna go back and not be funneled forward on the property toward away from the wetland, I don't have the answers to that. Because that's the issue, is how much additional negative impact will it have on a wetland that can or cannot absorb. I mean, if you're putting in a paved impervious parking lot that was 3,000 square feet and it was all gonna dump toward the wetland, then, parking lots get built and they cause problems if you don't put drainage in properly and send it the right direction. What is the size of this house?
2,100 square feet.
2,100 square feet.
And plant, it's a single story.
And which way is the roof line going? Is it going toward the front, toward Seneca Road?
It's gonna dump south and north.
Okay.
have the opportunity. Rotated 35.
It's, but it's facing toward with gables looking toward Seneca Road. So it's shedding off the sides of the house, the side of the garage. Okay,
But I think more importantly, presumably there's gutters.
Sure.
Yeah.
Do you have the opportunity to take the gutters and daylight them away from the wetland?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The grading.
Essentially, you
Yeah.
create your own, basically if that house, even though it's within 100 feet. My sense is you could probably build it such that all of the impervious that you're adding is not actually impacting the wetland, because none of it is actually draining to the wetland.
Well, naturally,
It would take some work.
naturally, we want a daylight where the grade goes most, right? And that's not only making sense in this application, but it's easy. And as the grade slopes to the northeast, that's likely where we would try to date it.
Right, so the question is, could you daylight to a point that is outside the line? Is that just physically possible?
Oh, yeah, because you're almost there with that northeast corner of that house.
Right.
So I think that's an important piece of it
And
to help kind of justify that the impact of the building. Technically, it's almost like it's visible to the wetland if every drop of water hits that roof and the driveway is that directly outside.
You're correct. And I did read through the report from Delta about the delineation and the soil type, and that soil type, it is a silt, a gravelly silt loam, which is not one of those ones that retains lots of water. It drains fairly well. Silt is not your best drainage thing, but the gravel and loam are good drainers.
They're saying that's what's in the wetlands and the buffer zone, or
It's in the buffer zone.
that's what's in the buffer zone,
Yeah,
which is where the house is going to be located.
yeah, it's kind of proposed.
I mean, this property, it's been in the family for what, 50, 60, 70 years, and it's probably the driest spot on the property.
That's what it looks like when I'm walking. on it.
That's good stuff.
Yeah, it's very,
She's never had any life issues.
really draining.
Well, the apple trees would be dead if it
They
was
wouldn't.
wet.
if it was too
They
bad.
wouldn't grow.
So I have a couple other comments or thoughts. So what's, I'm sure you considered it, but what is happening between the road and the orchard? The canal area, what's open space, so has that been considered as a home site? Whether now or in the future?
We briefly considered it, but we like the privacy of the back corner. Our neighbor, Mr. Criswell, would prefer it back there, so it doesn't obstruct his view to the east. And, there's tremendous amount of foot traffic there on a day-to-day basis, and we feel putting it back there just has less effect on the local environment.
So I think
What would remain would be pretty much as is. The orchard may grow, we need to replace some trees, so we may bring that forward a row or two. But we do want some, lawn.
So this, I'm just thinking out loud here, and I'm not suggesting. It's maybe more of a suggestion for us or for the planning board, but I'm wondering if there is, as mitigation for the variance, encroaching into the buffer, some sort of deed restriction or requirement to maintain the orchard. Basically, what I'm hearing you say is that the orchard is important. And maybe there's a way to preserve that on paper into the future. So in exchange, because to me, the front is, when you look at the aerial, you got houses all along the front against the road, also you don't. So it's hard to say that that's not a building site because there's houses all along the street. But maybe in exchange for not building a house there and building it back, you sort of preserve all that land for expansion of the orchard. Having said that, I also think it is a legitimate home site in the future. That maybe your house goes in the back, you've got a flag lot, essentially, you can have another lot, with plenty of real estate to build more than one house. So I don't want to necessarily restrict you from being able to build a house in the front, but maybe even just the orchard as it exists today becomes some sort of deed restriction.
In the houses to the west, those were built in my childhood, by a gentleman who developed those lots, and he wanted to maximize the amount of development he could do. So, the lots are smaller than the lot that we have, and he just, he wanted to do as much development as he could. So I think that's kind of why, the small lots close to the road makes sense from a developer's perspective, I'm sure.
And that was the look back then too. Right up front.
Yeah,
It is
but-
consistent with the village though, too. It's not like they're excessively small or.
When you look at the total size of this lot, this L lot, they're kind of trying to sit in the middle of it. But you can't blame someone for wanting to sit in the middle of
No.
their giant lot, because the whole back part is
No, but also
undevelopable.
like, it's not necessarily a reason to grant a
No.
zoning variance either, though, like if you want to sit in the middle of a giant piece of property.
I agree, I feel like that's where maybe some mitigation.
Right.
Or something to compensate for that privilege, really, to be able to sit in the middle. of the
Right.
lot.
How would you deed restrict though
I don't know,
trees?
yeah.
How do you deed restrict trees?
Well, I think it's more-
Because they
In my
keep
experience
dying.
in real estate, you can't do it because it's a living
Yeah.
thing. It's
Yeah,
not
it's
a
not
village.
the trees themselves, I just think just the land area, some sort of swap of just preserving, because there's disturbance, right? And I think you pointed out that you're clearing some trees, right?
I mean, and I would say important trees to the buffer, like that's the natural vegetation there.
So maybe it's not even the full orchard, maybe it's just one for one. Here's the area you're disturbing us inside the buffer, with that buffer needs to grow. You know, comparable amount of, land.
What is in the buffer zone now? Is it just scrub? That basically, other than the part that is lawn where the house kind of is, what's in that buffer zone? Is it,
I mean, if you look
is
at
a
the
lot of
road-
that woods or?
As it works from the west to the east, right, that it's lawn area, and then as it kind of, the buffer zone comes north, then it starts encroaching on the orchard. So if you were to look at the bottom right-hand corner of the survey where that larger yellow area is,
Right.
there are apple trees.
Okay, so what about the space that's behind the proposed house? What is all?
That's what the engineering report delineates. It's a combination of rose flora and 3 or 4 major species of trees. There's maple, walnut, and I can't remember what the
So
other
if you
one.
walk the property,
I read through it 3 times, to understand that.
it's basically that's the edge of that brush line and that.
Okay, and then, and the danger to that, if there's too much water back there, that will affect the trees and.
I don't know exactly what it, I mean, I'm not an expert in wetland management, so I don't know if dumping more water, there's a problem, or if dumping less water, there's a problem if there's, I don't know, tree frogs that live out there. I have no idea. I'm not an expert.
We've dealt with other issues over the years where when there was a bank or that, that we were working with and water drainage, our concern was that there was plant life there to slow down the movement of any water that was there.
Mhm.
What I'm hearing is there's plant life there now and not a lot of slope. There's not a lot of slope. It is the buffer zone. It is going into the wetland. There's not a slope, and there's a lot of plant life there to absorb the water. Now, does that mean some plant life will grow better because it has more water than others?
Sure.
Is that necessarily a bad thing if one plant ends up taking over this area because there's more water than another?
I mean,
it comes
I
down to the
don't
larger
know.
question is, what are we trying to protect? I understand if you have too much water, it'll kill everything. And it'll be a swamp. I understand that. Are these wetlands all potential swamps? And a 2,100 square foot house is gonna turn a potential swamp into a swamp?
That L property, how long is it in the tax map? The L coming from Prospect Street?
Oh, how far?
It's 800 foot long, right? Give or take a few feet.
Yeah.
250 and 250 and 540 on the one side and 615 and 171 on the other. So give or take 20 feet, it's 800 foot long. That whole property is a combination of just exactly what the engineering report said, because I've walked it several times. I sold that thing to their parents 20 years ago and they are the only ones in all that group that held that. And everybody else bought land to develop houses on the road on one side and apartments on the road on the other side. In a really wet area compared to this. Just so you get a history of what that whole place and space is. And that, there's nothing there. There's not a building in here or a shed or anything. It's just
It's pretty thick.
it's growth. And it's a lot of it.
They bought that to protect themselves from other people building close to them. So it's kind of a strip of protection.
Yeah, I think it's important to distinguish when you talk about the impact of development on like a wetland. The real threat to the wetland is not the water itself, right? Most of these species thrive in wet environments. I think that's really what the wetland is. And the idea that permanent installation that some increased groundwater being migrating wetland is really not that significant. Well, typically what the concern is the impacts of the development itself, salting driveways and salt migrating into a wetland. That would be something that would be of environmental concern. Or during construction, stormwater running into and we'll say clogging the ability of those soils to drain. And those are construction practices that when you're building, you have to agree to. But you know, these wetlands are only designated as wetlands because you can observe species that thrive in wet environments. And a lot of what Delta told us when they came out and looked at it is, you know, there's an adjacent neighbor to the southwest who has a significant amount of their property, which is diverted into that corner. And there's essentially a natural swale that cuts through the property in discussion. And because of all this surface water that accumulates and runs through here, it maintains a level of moisture, which is creating this species growth. And so, you know, again, I understand what you guys have to evaluate, you know, what the potential impact would be. And, you know, honestly, that's what they want to do too. And that's why you go and you hire, you know, professional to come out and evaluate and write a report like this.
Do we have additional questions or concerns? Where I'm leaning toward is, we get the next meeting scheduled so we can make a determination.
Yeah.
And everybody should take an opportunity to
Yeah,
read through the
I mean,
full.
can we walk out here? Is it okay? I went to the end of Sunrise Terrace, but I didn't, I mean, I just wasn't sure about, I didn't want to walk.
We
through
haven't
someone's yard,
posted
you
it
know.
yet, so, yeah.
I felt if I walked on it and they confronted me, I'd tell them, I'm the chair of the ZBA. Do you want me to look at your property or not? That's what I thought I would say, but nobody was there this morning, so. But I think we need to read that in that whole, that 27-page document. You should read that.
If you do walk out there, I would love to see you walk out there to see the culvert of where water is being put on our land to divert it onto our property to make it somewhat wet. I mean, that's kind of what's happening out there. We, you know, we don't want to make enemies out of our neighbors at this point, so we're.
It's hard to get around the fact that water runs from one property to the next all over this village.
But you
And-
can't intentionally divert it. onto
Right,
someone's
And that's what's
property.
happening.
Right, exactly.
A
But
culvert has been added and it's now running on this property.
back in that, back L piece, that long piece. Where all your woods are.
I think it'd be good for everybody to go look at it, because, you know, zoning is a broad brush, and that's why we have these processes, and when you go out there, I think, you know, there's a common sense element to this, where you go and stand on it, and go, okay, this makes sense, and I think the concern, perceived concern about, you know, any harm to the wetland starts to feel a little different in that context. I mean, zoning has to think about a situation where you have a 25% grade 100 feet away from a wetland where certainly everything you do is going to run into it. And, you know, and then in this case, we have a gentle slope away from the wetland, just every certain instance.
But we welcome you to walk the land. Please.
Okay, we thank you for that. Any other questions? Comments?
No.
I just want to say that
Sure.
I think that house is in the right spot. Just looking at the topo map, and if you're gonna, and I can't read the topo map.
Excellent. Appreciate you being here on the
Put it
board.
out there for everyone else that,
I need the summit so that I know which way the slopes are going.
yeah, so you ignore the property lines, ignore the wetland boundary, ignore everything, just look at the topo map. The house is in the right spot. And I know that they're in the business and they know how to site a house, and I think that they've done a good job.
This would really have to share, we're all in construction business, so how do we share that part with you that we do that?
And walking it, you don't have to know how to read a topo map. You go down Sunrise Terrace, use the survey, one of these as your guide. And it's, you know, obviously I'm a builder also, but it's pretty obvious it would be a ideal spot for the house, given a lot.
And if you want to migrate into the thicket, there's still rivets where the delineators noted the edge of what they consider the wetland. So you can see the ribbons hanging from some of the shrubs, which will give you that indicator.
But be careful about deer tick farm, because I bet you once you head to the woods, they'll be really happy to.
And ignore that big pile of apples that are not feeding them.
I saw the big pile of apples. I was looking to see if any of them looked, you know.
Feel free to pick one.
Uh,
But if you head down to the stand, Susan's gonna try to sell you a bushel, so.
I just, they're literally, they're just ripening so quick
Yeah,
that they're just falling on the ground. Once they hit the ground, we throw them away because of the deer poop. And it's, yeah, so I'm trying to. Put on some reverse and use them and. Little ways.
Can any other comments? So let's take a motion to adjourn.
When do we?
Should we schedule it now?
So, we
Yeah.
can schedule it now if you're comfortable with
Yeah.
that. The statute just says 5 days. It doesn't actually specify 5 business days, so I could post tomorrow for next Monday. Or Tuesday to be safest. Next Tuesday. You want to do that?
Days you usually don't do business day?
I mean, it's gonna, it will print on Wednesday. That looks like.
Well, Monday's a holiday.
Oh, it
it
is.
is.
Yeah.
So I can post Wednesday, it'll be printed Wednesday. So.
Next week, what's available for you guys?
I'm pretty flexible.
Tuesday?
Prefer Wednesday.
Wednesday, I can't do Wednesday. I work on Wednesdays. I mean, I only work 2 days a week, Sundays and Wednesdays, so.
Rub it in, okay.
I could do.
Tuesday, 11.
Yeah,
That works for me.
Can we get that, if you post that tomorrow?
Yeah, we can do that. I'll find you a correct. that one. We'll find you.
We just have a
You
tape
record
recorder here. We just record
it. Fantastic.
it. We've done that before.
Okay,
Tuesday, the 11th,
for 6:30.
6:30. 6:30 work?
That's for me.
Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
Have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. We're done.
Sticking on these bags, probably gonna need it for the next phase, huh?
What's up?
You're gonna need it for the next phase?
Tuesday.
Here's how you hang.
6:30. With your